Well, good morning and happy Friday. We have an exciting interview this morning with Teepa Snow, but just a few announcements before we begin. The first is a reminder that our monthly coalition meeting is scheduled for next Friday, June 17th at 11 a.m. And a reminder, there are no Friday facts that day. I already sent out the cancellations for that. And then as always, please just make sure to write your name and organization in the comment box and post any questions that you have along the way. And we'll make sure that we address them at the end. And with that, I will pass the mic over to Heather to go ahead and interview our guest this morning.
Thank you so much, Virginia. I am so excited to be here with Teepa Snow. A full disclosure, I've been a fangirl of Teepa's for almost 20 years. My first Teepa training was in 2003. So that just aged both of us. So forgive if there's gushing during this. And I'm even wearing my Teepa brain change fashion items. So we're so excited. So Teepa, I'm going to stop talking in just a second. We want to learn all about you and your story. But before we start, just to help frame everyone in terms of, you are a dementia care and training specialist, and you're owner, leader of the Positive Approach to Care group. So contextualize it for us. What is Positive Approach to Care?
Yeah, so Positive Approach to Care came into being in 2006. And as Heather already intimated, I was already out doing things well before then. I was actually working for, at the time, the Eastern chapter of the North Carolina Alzheimer's Association, first as a volunteer, and then as a trainer, and then as the education director. And what came about in about 2003 is we had produced Accepting the Challenge, providing the best care for people living with dementia. And it was one of the very first videos ever created with people living with dementia and us talking about this condition. And we made sure it said dementia, not Alzheimer's, because we were already recognizing of this serious illness. I mean, it is a serious illness, for sure it's a serious illness, but it's an umbrella term. And so what we were really committed to from the very beginning is you can't just say Alzheimer's if it's more than Alzheimer's. And frankly, the only way these things are related is by where they cause problems in the brain and the kind of problems they cause, but they're not all related to Alzheimer's. There's different things. They're just different dementias. And what happened is then from that, we were doing an international presentation, and I was getting asked to do consulting with people outside of my role in the Eastern chapter, because I would be asked to go other places like Canada and Texas and Florida, et cetera. And so I started seeing that just being in North Carolina, the ability I had to get people excited, interested, and able to take data in was important to pay attention to, because what I'd hear is, wow, the way you did that, I got it. My family's got it. It makes a difference. And so I decided I needed to start doing it more outside of just one little space of Eastern North Carolina, which I was already doing Eastern and Western North Carolina, Virginia, South Carolina. And so it just got bigger. And that's when I formed the company. And then we built the company, first a website, then some videos, then working with a nonprofit in Florida to create more videos, Pines, which started videos all over the place, all over the world. And then we built certification courses and mentors. And that's where Heather sort of, so it's a website, teepasnow.com, because, Positive Approach could be several things. We're talking about people living with brain changes, their partners, their providers, people who are worried about developing dementia. I mean, it's all kinds of people that we serve. And so we have a website, teepasnow.com, has a huge number of free resources, and then opportunities for each of those groups, because we have a core team of people living with dementia as well.
I'm so glad you mentioned your website. I actually was going to mention it for you in just a little while. And I know it is teepasnow.com, but I will tell you the way that my brain sees it is Teepas Now. And that's what I think about when people think about Teepa Snow is, and professionally, so many of my colleagues, they have an issue and they're like, we need Teepa now. And so it's somehow that S becomes a silent, but every time I go to your website a lot, I was like, I need Teepa now, but it is teepasnow.com. So Teepa, we're going to come back to positive approach, but go way back. Where are you from? Tell us about your background, because I know I always like to stalk people. There's some interesting things beforehand. So where'd you grow up? How'd you evolve?
Yeah, so I was born in Morgantown, West Virginia. And then shortly after, my dad was in the Army. So we moved out to Washington State, where he was in service out there. And then when I was getting kindergarten out there, they moved us back to West Virginia. And guess what they don't have in West Virginia? Kindergartens. So I was not a happy camper at first when we moved back. I lived in West Virginia for a good bit. And then when I was about 12, we moved, my parents split and I moved to Western Pennsylvania near Pittsburgh, and went to junior high school there, and then moved to North Carolina when I went to Duke. So I came down and went my undergraduate at Duke. Well, while I was still in Pennsylvania, I was working with developmental disabilities that had come out of institutional care, because I was around in the era of, I don't remember if you remember Dibs. Dibs was a child with autism, and they believed, and there was a book about the reason he had autism was because his mother was cold and didn't know how to be a good parent. We actually believed that mothers didn't know how to be parents, and that's how children got autism. And so the decision was, put them in institutions where we can care for them better than their parents did. And that did not work out. And so they sent them back home, and they closed those institutions down in Pennsylvania about that time. And so all these kids were coming back home after 2 or 3 years in an institution. And the parents were going, you said I couldn't do this. Now what? Wait, whoa. And so there was a lot of drama and trauma around that. And I was in high school with a bunch of really good friends who decided, let's start a Saturday program with a college kid who, and just be in charge of everything. Never would happen now. But we would do programming with kids with autism, kids with speech problems, speech with kids with cerebral palsy, because all those kids had previously been thought to need institutional, and they were all coming back home. So my grandfather had moved in when I was younger. So I had my grandfather, who we thought he was eccentric. Now I look back, he had vascular dementia. He had COPD. He had lost my grandma. He thought he should go back and be he got in so much trouble, but I was good with him. I was good working with the kids with developmental disabilities. And so I came down to Duke. I was either going to go into special education or be a physician.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then after 5 majors, my mother said, either graduate or you pay for the next semester. I went into zoology because I could graduate. After a couple years of finding myself working in an adult day health in the basement of a church, but it wasn't called that then. It was just daycare for old people, and graduating people who had behavioral disturbances caused by autism and Down syndrome. So I was a teacher's aide there, volunteer, while I worked desk clerk at Carolina Inn. I don't know what you think you're going to do with a zoo degree, but ain't much. And then I went to UNC for the first year when they opened the occupational therapy program, the master's program. And I was the first graduate from that program in 1980.
That's great. I saw the zoology background, and I was hoping you were going to add that, and wondering, I have questions about what you see, about what you learned about other kinds of 4-legged animals, and then how you connected to your work with 2-legged animals. But is there a connection?
Genetics. I did take genetics, and I'm really curious about, I've been really curious about creatures for a long time, and animals and people, and how people work and how animals work and how things happen. So, that was a possibility too at one point, but then it was like, after my first semester at Duke, it was like, and the organic chemistry lab. Yeah, about that. I don't do left and right. So I can't do the isomers and understand. I have a really hard time. I can't memorize them because they'll flip on me. I just can't do left and right. So it was miserable. I passed, but it was like, and do I want to do this the rest of my life?
Yeah.
No, no.
I didn't
So
even
it's
get
like, I
that.
got to find something else.
Yeah, I know that generally is the barrier to entry for lots of folks. But something I was curious about that I want to ask, and you alluded to it when you talked about children with autism, and I want to talk about people with that have brain change and dementia. What do you think is the most misunderstood?
Mm.
You did a great tee up in talking about autism, but I know there's so many myths and misunderstandings that you're trying to bust and re-educate around dementia, around Alzheimer's, around other related diseases.
Well, Heather, now you didn't know I was going to do this, but I am. So, well, sort of. I
know
warned
you
you. I
asked to
had
share
some.
screen, have the ability to share screen, which
I know I did ask for the ability to share screen. So I'm going to put this up here because this is one of the biggest myths out there. So if I give you these words, dementia, something goes between, Alzheimer's, something goes between, and the idea of memory problems. What I'm going to ask is what mathematical symbol would you put in those red circles? I mean, just you guys out there, what would you think about putting in there? What kind of symbol, like plus, minus, equals, greater than, less than, not equal, whatever math symbol you want to put in there? What symbols do you think you might want to put there? You don't have to tell me. Here's what I'm going to tell you.
People put anything in the chat. I know for me, I have a dementia. For a lot of people, it might be equal or plus.
There you go. 90 to 95% of the general public thinks that it's approximately, so when you have Alzheimer's, you have memory problems, when you have dementia, you have Alzheimer's, people really misunderstand the relationship of these words and what they mean. So here's the best answer. When you have dementia, it can be more than just having Alzheimer's because there turn out to be over 120 forms, causes, and types of dementia. We also know that when you have Alzheimer's, you have a lot more going on than just memory problems. As a matter of fact, you can't have the thing we call dementia or Alzheimer's without having more than memory problems. There's at least two parts of your brain that are changing. And the other thing I would say is I talk a lot about brains changing, not just brains dying. Because when brains lose a function, they use what's left. So the tricky part is it's not like just like now I'm missing something. I use what else I have. And that means you will often see me behave differently. And everybody talks, well, that's because she doesn't do this. And it's like, but it's also because now I do this. So I use what I got. So for instance, if I can't remember what I just ate, I would say to Heather, Heather, can I have lunch? And Heather says,
it's like, Mom, you just ate. Oh.
Well, no, I didn't. I just got in here.
No, you did it. And then we can just start
fighting
with each other.
Oh, this is ridiculous. And so what I still have is a capacity to ask a question, be curious, want to have my routine. And Heather is picking up on, I not only don't remember, I'm also not picking up on the sense of fullness and complete. I just ate, but I'm not noticing that.
And me as your care partner just wants to fight with you and tell you you're wrong. And I'm right.
Well, here's the skill. And here's the skill I do have. I know how to argue. And one of the very last things I will lose is the ability to say no and to tell you you're full of shit. And now that, and everybody go, but one of my skills I keep are forbidden words because they're protective mechanisms. And Heather's going to have to learn that when I used my forbidden words, what we want to pick up on is she's ticked me off and she now has a choice. Does she really want to rile me up more or does she choose to do something different?
I'm so glad you brought up swearing because funny, Virginia and Steve Hahn and I were talking yesterday about swearing. And I was joking around that now that I run my own company, I don't have a no swearing policy. So I can swear. And then I realized, oh, wait, the coalition and Health Innovations Group, they probably have it, but I don't have a no swearing policy. And then I said, actually, thanks to my training by Teepa, swearing takes on a whole other place. And we talked about forbidden words. And so talk about that. Some of the ways that you train care partners, caregivers, that there are these forbidden words and go with it.
Yeah, so if you would, everybody out, you have free hands, and you may not, you may be busy this morning, but if you take your left hand and you index and your middle finger, go ahead and grab those. Those are called the fingers of skill. Because this is median nerve distribution. And when you do something with these, whether it's buttons or right or zipper or whatever, these are skillful fingers. These two fingers give you strength. These make you skillful. So take your 3 skill fingers and put it to your left temporal lobe, because that's where you find language skills, formal language skills for 98% of the human population, 98% formal language skills. So pick your thumb up and go vocabulary words, then go bring it in towards you. This is receptive ability, the ability to take in language, to understand what people are saying to you, and then take your 3rd finger and go out, expressive language, the ability to create sounds that put them into words, put them in a sentence, form a thought, and share it. So the skill of language is located in the left temporal lobe. Over here on the right, do this. The right is the rhythm section, more rhythm related parts of language. And there are skills over there. We have, do this. These things over here, it was vocabulary, forbidden words, and social chit chat. Well, I never, isn't that something? Well, hey, sweetheart, well, God bless you. Go to hell. So positive ways of connecting, but also ways of expressing distress. Preserve. And it's done with intensity of a certain level. We'll talk about that. Second thing that's located in here, turn taking. And if you think about it, turn taking is one of the things babies and mommies do. I do something, you do something, you do something, I do something. That back and forth. Now do like this. It's also going to be arguing, because that's turn taking. The third, oh, that's not nice. The third thing over here, and it is a skill, is that idea of tone of voice and intensity. So it includes intensity, frequency, and volume. And the intensity, frequency, and volume go up, you can tell that I am starting to lose control. But it's also when you give intensity, frequency, or volume, I take that in, and now I don't know what are you yelling at me? I'm not yelling at you. I'm trying to get your, don't you tell me. And so this, shut up, just shut up, leave me alone. No. That intensity is the warning system when you hear it. So, and then we have these 2 strengths over here. These fingers make your hand strong, these 2 over here. So what we have over here is anything learned with rhythm tends to be preserved. So music, poetry, prayer, or counting. Music, poetry, prayer, counting. Those are gifts that we tend to keep. Something in that range will be kept for much longer. That's why people can sing when they can't talk. And then the last is automatic rhythmic things that are associated with talking. So if I go, well, hey, and I offer my hand, what are most of you going to do? Yeah. If I were to go, ooh, come here, what are you going to do? Do it. Yeah. Because it's automatic. So people living with dementia dance better than they walk. Now, while we sort of think on that for a second, I'm going to share my screen one more time here, maybe. Let me see if I can.
Great. And as you're sharing, if people have questions, I have a ton of questions, so I have no problem, but if anyone wants to add in their questions, because I want you to go on more as you're talking about education, how you educate families, and then want to talk about your best way or what you've learned to how to educate other clinicians.
Yeah. So this is the left temporal lobe. I'm showing you some brain pictures. Oh, wow. White matter is wiring. Dark stuff is storage units, if you would, gray matter. So what we have, this is the left temporal language skills. This is what people have left at the end. On the right, blue circle, still got more tissue, more functioning. So these things, great big holes in the ventricle. So Heather said, how do I educate people? Visual, verbal, and then physical. Mm-hmm. Because when I use a multimedia of education, your brain has more ways to take data in. So if I show you this brain, this is an older human brain, same section, we just sliced from top to bottom. This is the pathways between your body and your brain that allow your body and your brain to work together. This is this language, formal language, and this is your rhythm section. This is what we have by the end. So tell me what you're noticing are some of the differences?
Well, I mean, there's so much more of the black space, so much is missing. It's not there anymore. It's
Yeah. Oh, interesting. So when I say your brain, take these 3 fingers, skill fingers, and go down to 1 finger. By the end of this disease, you only have 1/3 of your brain left, but you still do have 1/3 of your brain left. So what am I going to be able to do? What I have left. What am I not going to be able to do? Things that I can't do are the things that are now missing. Who in this picture has a full brain?
yeah, those of us who are providing care in the care circle. So
So
puts
what do
people
we
on
tend to like to use?
So when you're educating families, do you find, because I know I look at these pictures, they're so powerful. Do you find families, this is what families react to? They see the picture and the light bulb goes off.
Males are the ones that frequently look at that picture, and I will actually, this is the most frequent thing. Shit. So she's not doing this on purpose. Oh my God. I mean, and that's honestly, there's the jaw drop when they realize, oh, this is oh,
Yeah.
because these are autopsy brains. This is after someone has died. And if you don't have that, I mean, how are you to know what's going on? Because our heads don't shrink, just our brains. And that's hard to envision. And because it's unstable, because I didn't tell you, now those are the structural changes, but you have chemical changes that are on, off, all through the whole thing. Women react often more to words because women are more language based. And so they are also more tuned into the emotions of speech and connecting. Not all of them, but 75%, because they lead with their heart and, Mom, please stop. What are you doing? And it's, hey, Heather, let's pause for a second. But why did she say she wished she never had a daughter like me? And she's so mad at me. And it's like, yeah, she's really mad. Let's go back and let's figure that out. I mean, and so for them, it's, for people who are more emotional, have to go to where they are emotionally. Because I know that, guess what? When we get upset, which side of our brain is going to be more active? The left or the right? What do y'all think? It's skillful language or?
Well, I'm thinking the emotional response, but I know I get emotional. So when you're talking, the families, I mean, do you find this is how it helps them? And I know we have a question where we're going to get into coverage and policy, but in terms of the support that families need, is the first step educating them that they understand what's going on and then helping them craft a different positive approach? Ooh, look, I just segued into your name and I didn't mean to, but yeah.
Oh, well, usually I even back up a little further, Heather, and I start with, so tell me how you're doing. Here, here, or here. Here, here, or here. Because when we say, how are you doing? What's the right answer? Everybody knows
I'm
it.
fine.
Fine, I'm okay. It's been hard. But instead, when I go,
Crazy.
is it here, here, or here? I'm actually asking you to think for a second and feel for a second. What's your status? And I've actually given you permission to be here. I've given you permission to be here. I've given you permission to be anywhere along. And when you tell me the answer, you give me an answer, I will typically say, I'll give you back feedback. And then I'll say, what are 2 things though, when you think about it, even if you're down here, what are 2 things that are better than they could be, or at least not as bad as they could be? And what's 1 thing you wish you could change? Because I got to hear where somebody is before I start trying to take them where I want them to go. And it's one of the hardest things for us, I think, when we're working with others and dementia's in the mix, because we're trying so hard to help that we shove help at people. And that's not a helpful thing to do, actually.
Well, as a coalition, we're coming. There's I think over 170 members now in the North Carolina Serious Illness Coalition, and we all come from different perspectives in the healthcare space and the social services space and the advocacy space. So one of the things I want us to talk about, we have just a few minutes left, is how we can work together as a coalition and ways that we can use our collective impact when it comes to making change. I know my friend John has a question, and he says, Teepa, the hospice Medicare benefit was not designed in the 1980s for persons with dementia. And payers are restricting access to hospice care for persons with dementia and their families. How would you design a Medicare benefit for persons living with dementia? Ooh, good question.
One of the very first things to recognize is they tried to base it on the knowledge that they had back then, which at best was super limited and always. And unfortunately, there are so many other dementias and there are so many needs that we have. We need a plan that actually looks at palliative comfort care much sooner than we have. I would start with comfort, because if we can't get people comfortable, death is going to be miserable. And this idea of just hospice entering in the last 6 days of life, which is, I think it may be up to 8 now, maybe it's just still 6. It's way too late to truly support a system that's been providing cares for on average 8 to 12 years, because they needed some support way sooner. We know all dementias are going to end in death if something doesn't kill you along the way. And yet there's lots of possibilities for things to take you out. Only 2 out of 4 people living with dementia will die at the end of dementia. Other folks will die along the way with other conditions, but their dementia had an impact on it. And one of the most common ones to look at is hip fractures or head injuries that really will precipitate an event. So John, my answer is, I think we need to get people together to really talk about, when do we need comfort care and when do we need palliative care? When do we want to do curative measures? And how long are we going to keep putting people at the end of life, at the end of dementia, in intensive care units and spend so much money there, when we know what the outcome is going to be? Why do we keep bringing them into ER situations that isn't going to really match up? And it's because we don't give support in the right way earlier to prepare people for the later states of this journey and what it should look like. I mean, we have so much work to do in this area. We believe dementia is, because it's not mostly covered under Medicare, your other health conditions will be covered, but Medicare essentially does very little except evaluation and getting near the end to death care, and then other things we treat along the way, but we don't do much. And that's our biggest mistake.
We have just a few minutes left, but I know the Serious Illness Coalition breaks out into 4 work groups. And so, and definitely, and one of them is looking at clinical and professional education. And so I think helping to move the needle forward through the clinical education pathway. And then we have another one on caregiver and patient engagement. And so I think, and looking at advanced care planning, and then I want to end with some communications work, but all of these different ways is to help move education forward and help to look at serious illness in a different way. And I think you've been so helpful in looking at how do we incorporate dementia as a very serious illness, and that starts, and for so many caregivers, many years, and I know we have caregivers on this call right now, or on that are really looking at the best ways to support their loved ones. In terms of
support themselves, because the other side of this is, all we've done is every generation do all the same things that will precipitate the possibility of you developing your own dementia from lifestyle. And without different and changing ways of supporting carers who get in it, and then 4 out of 5 families, there's only one by the end, and they overdo it. And so the pattern is, well, we just got somebody else that started the brain changing, either due to health conditions like diabetes or hypertension, or because they had genetic coding to start with, or something else. We've got to change this. It's ridiculous what we're doing to ourselves.
It's in all of our futures in one way or the other, either ourselves, our loved ones, someone in our friend network. So we only have a minute left, but I did want to call attention to, besides teepasnow.com, you haven't amassed, and this goes to our communication, something that we're really jealous, you haven't amassed an amazing social media following on TikTok.
Yeah.
For those of you who are not on TikTok yet, you would make a teenage wannabe influencer so jealous. So Teepa, I looked yesterday, you have over 240,000 followers. You've had over 3 million likes and much more views. So did you plan to be a
This
social
started
media
in late
influencer?
October. No, my team finally said, you've got to do TikTok. And it's like, are you kidding me? I don't even know how to talkie. And so they finally got me to do it. And the second, we do option 1, option 2. common care, best care practice. And we do these little 3-minute things. And we had like 7 million views of some of this stuff. And it was like, you've got to be kidding me. Because they're just watching me in a role play situation, interacting with somebody else on my team in a role play situation. And it's so helpful to people. It's just really apparently, we get students, we get faculty, we get families, we get professionals.
They are great. So I'm going to end with a shout out to you. Go to @Teepa Snow. If you go on to TikTok, it is amazing. And I think it's good for us also as educators, as advocates, what you're able to put forth in a 3-minute, really real video has some humor to it. But I've watched so many of the videos, and as a caregiver myself, really saw so many things that I've was affected by. And so I will end with our social media and influencer star, Teepa Snow, teaching us about dementia and helping to make the world a better place, one brain at a time. Teepa, I can't thank you enough for sharing.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. Super cool. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Meet everybody, sort of.
Thank you. And thank you, Coalition.
Thanks.